just need to talk to me.
Do you need a dog in the background? Oh, I don't think we can do Cheddar. We can't do that. There she is. Oh,
Oh, cute.
maybe we should do this. I guess that's distracting. No, then you don't see me. Oh, well, at least you see her. All right, we're going back to where I was.
Okay.
Is this where are you?
I'm in Austin, Texas.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So with this part isn't live right now. And we'll talk for about 10 minutes and we'll just take the best, 3 or 4 minutes and then we'll make that go live on our site and on YouTube. So I was fascinated by your bio and being kind of a man of the West. I sort of fascinated, like Princeton, Miss Porter's, Connecticut, then you like move to Wyoming, but you keep moving more and more west. And I just wonder, like, what is the appeal of the West to you?
Well, my parents loved the West, and they took me there as a young girl to a dude ranch. They ended up working as fishing guides there, and I ended up working there as a kitty wrangler. And I love being out in wide, open spaces on the back of a horse. And so I feel like sharing a wilderness trail with another species just brings it all really to life for me. So I moved to Wyoming from the East Coast for that reason, to be in that area. And I thought I was going to be an environmental attorney. That was my plan at the time.
Yeah. And so, another nice thing about this book coming out when it does is that, you're not a 24-year-old debut writer. So had the itch kind of always been there, or I know you went to grad school you got your MFA kind of recently, right?
Oh, yes. I was in my very late 50s. Well, when I finished the Iditarod, I knew I wanted to write a book about the story I'd lived, and mostly because I wanted to honor the dogs. I never dreamt it would take me 11 years to do so. And about halfway into that time, I recognized I was being given feedback. You've got a great story. It ought to be about this angle or that angle. And I realized, darn it all, it needs to be my story, my angle, and I need to learn how to do that. And so I went back and got a low residency MFA, which really, in terms of a life changer for me, is right up there with running Iditarod. It was so wonderful. And MFA programs get a bum rap, and I'm here to tell you, for me, it made all the difference.
But I liked what you said, that everybody was telling you what your story should be, and you realized it had to be your own story. But easier said than done, right? I mean, finding your voice, and there's so much to the race, and so much to your own story. So tell me about the process of actually sitting down and whittling all that down and figuring out what your story was.
Well, the first thing to do was to document where I'd been, which was tricky because, first of all, you're very sleep deprived when you go there. And second, so what I did after each race and each qualifying race, I just sat down and wrote and wrote and wrote. I have probably 100 pages of single-spaced free writing after everything. So that's how I captured a lot of the detail. And that was also aided by going on the Serum Run in 2007 after it was all done, back through the territory where I'd been. So I was working on documenting it for years. When you've lived a big story, writer Danny Shapiro said to me, "I'm so sorry you have such a great experience to write about, because it is so hard to separate out what's going to matter to your particular memoir, to pull the threads for the story, which is separate. You're not a journalist, you're not a videographer, you're a memoirist. So through the lens of memory, to figure out what to leave in and what to take out was very challenging. It took a long, long time."
Yeah. Was it difficult to write about the personality of each different dog?
Now that's the easy part. I mean, think about writing about the personality of your best friend. You're never going to forget that. And the heart of that personality, that relationship with you is it might change over time. It might evolve. Juliet until the day she died, when I put on her harness, was spinning around and yodeling. Kanga, as long as she lived with us, was alpha, very subtle, very devoted, but ruling the roost in a really subtle way. That part was easy. I could write a book about each one of the dogs, but it would get boring to other people, I suspect.
Right. There is, this guy, John Katz, Katz, who writes nonfiction books about border collies. And he hasn't had one lately, but it was amazing. I mean, I own 2 dogs, and it was amazing to me how, he just kept writing about this one breed, and I mean, of course, he writes about himself too, so that was part of the appeal to people, I guess. But, our reviewer made this sort of note in their review of the book that, he thinks that maybe the injuries for you were more severe than you let on in the book, and I wondered if that was true.
I'm from New England, and so I'm not. To me, if anybody said Debbie sensationalized this, that would be devastating to me right now. And obviously, I'm reading every little response all over the place. I don't know. We train for it. We live in it. It wasn't scary cold on either Iditarod. And people have said, she underplays how cold it is. To somebody sitting in Florida, yeah, it would have been life-threatening cold because our bodies adapt. They really do. For me, it was not life-threatening cold. You have to be vigilant up here in the wilderness. But that plays into people asking questions about extreme sports and things like that. If I really thought I was taking on an extreme sport, I would never have done it because I was responsible for these dogs. And I guess in the book, I just wanted to show the nitty gritty of it. And if you start sensationalizing it to yourself, anyway, that's counterproductive. And so in hindsight, I really tried to authenticate it as best I could. I'm just not somebody that's going to say, woe was me, but well, I mean, I do think I put my anxiety on the page.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say a question about that.
the hallucinations, I mean, is that a common thing on the race? I mean, and how is there any way to sort of combat that, to prevent it?
Well, sleep deprivation is, I would say, the biggest human challenge on the race. I mean, we're running in a run-rest schedule that's great for the dogs, but that doesn't mean it's great for the human. So the dogs would love to go run 4, rest 4, run 4, rest 4, all the way to Nome. Well, for a human in a 4-hour rest, you can't sleep at all. So, I mean, anyway, I couldn't. Some of the big pros maybe could. So I tried to do it in 6 to 8 hour runs, 6 to 8 hour rests. The hallucinations, the story in my book that approximates a hallucination wasn't entirely, I mean, I didn't call it a hallucination. It was when I saw lights following me in a storm, and I was sure they were snow machines coming out to just make sure we were okay. So that was a lot of Pollyanna thinking, as my 30-year-old children would say to me now. And then all of a sudden, after hours of this, and they never came closer, and really I knew that didn't make sense, I realized that they were the streetlights of a village that we were getting closer and closer to. Yeah, I think my imagination carried me away in that scene of what that could have been. I have had true hallucinations on the trail where you start seeing things in the woods, not on Iditarod, because by the time I ran Iditarod, I pretty well knew how to sleep in a manner that would keep me functional for the dogs on the trail. But in my first qualifying race, I didn't eat right, so I didn't sleep well. And I was seeing camouflage trucks and things where there were only pine trees and things like that. And then I would sort of come to and realize it, but then they would come back. At one point I jumped off the runners of my sled because I thought somebody else was jumping on. And that was bad. And that shook me up. That was in a qualifying race. So that I can say that I never really fell into a real hallucination on Iditarod. But people do, it's all about sleep. You're out there for a long time.
Right, right. And so when I talk to writers who are publishing memoir, I usually ask them, if they had to sort of run the manuscript by someone else who they're writing about in the book, because these issues of, memory and accountability sort of come to the fore in memoir. But you wrote about dogs, so did you? I mean, this writing about their personalities we've talked about, but did you sort of run it by your husband or someone else who knows the dogs to make sure you caught them in a sort of vibrant way, or?
I ran it. I have some very severe critics in my family, and of course, I wrote the whole story about the family in addition to the dogs. So my daughter's a children's writer. She got an MFA before I did. She knows this. She's really tired of this book. She read it a lot. And my husband and my son's the type that says, throw that out. That's terrible. It's not exactly the word he uses, So I had editors from within. I shared it with a lot of people, actually.
Cool. Well, great. Well, this is perfect. Thanks for taking some time. I know it's in the morning in Alaska, so thanks for getting up and talking to us, and good luck with the book.
Well, thanks. It's a wild feeling to have my book out in the world. I'm a first-time author, and it's been quite a week.
Yeah.
I said goodbye to my dogs yesterday because now I'm headed out on the Lower 48 book tour, and they drug me through the brush. That's why I've got a cut on my chin, but we came home safe and sound, and then I left them for 3 weeks.
Oh, well,
but they're in good hands. The family, I think, might be kind of happy because now they're all theirs. So
yeah. Well, I hope the upcoming weeks are as great as this week has been.
Well, thanks so much. It's good to talk to you. I'm glad I figured this out.
Yeah. Congrats on that too.
Thanks.
Okay. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.